Hi, everybody.
Hello.
That was a big sigh. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
By the time we kind of get on, by the time we get on board here, sometimes we've like done a couple things. Is that on? Is that the X on? Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. Don't laugh. I can't see that far. I think my family was kind of shocked this weekend. We were driving around a little bit, or a couple days ago, and we are doing the thing where they're like, "Oh, look at that over there. What does that say?" And I'm like, "I have
No idea.
no idea. I don't have my glasses on." So
Mhm.
they're like, "Where are your glasses?" I'm like, I don't know, at home somewhere.
I don't wear mine. I don't wear mine all the time. I wear them when I'm reading, but I don't wear them when I'm driving. So it'll be interesting when we get the eyes checked again to see if that's going to now be
The next thing,
a requirement.
I need them to drive, but not to be driven. So see, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal that I couldn't read the stuff. Oh, and then we were watching a movie. That was the other thing. We were watching a movie, and where they have like those scenes where they show like a little slip of paper, and it's important to the plot. And what does that say? I don't want to get up off the couch and run over to the TV. Like, what did it say? They're like, it's a note from their mom. It says they're dead.
Well, in the Emma, she'll want to show me something on the phone, and she's like holding it like this to me, and I'm like,
wrong place. Yes,
I can see it if it's over there.
Yes, and I'd be like this. I'd be like, I am nearsighted. You must be farsighted. Mm-hmm. So between the two of us, we have a good set of eyes.
We have 20/20 vision.
One set of 20/20 vision, and there you go. But you know what? You do not need to have perfect vision to study the Bible. So hallelujah. Because that's what we're doing tonight. So
and don't mind me, I have a stain here I spilled on the way here, so don't look at it. Just read Jesus Loves Me. You don't need to read the rest of it.
That's right. What does it say? Know. Oh, this I know. There you go.
So we'll just do the Jesus Loves Me part.
I can't even see it. It's like a shadow. So it's no big deal. And I've got like the line on my shirt is crooked. Anyway.
I know. I feel like I'm uncomfortable in my own skin today. Have you gone through that?
Yes.
So today I just feel very uncomfortable in my own skin. So if you see me doing a lot of this, that's why. Because I just don't feel comfortable in my skin today.
I definitely was feeling that when I got home, and I was supposed to come with Paul right away, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna take some time to decompress, take an extra long shower, just try to, I don't know. It didn't really work, but it I feel better. But you drove all the way here, so that's also kind of a big deal. So traffic makes you.
There wasn't really any traffic.
Oh, well, hallelujah!
No real traffic. And I was listening to Paul and John, who were on earlier. If you didn't hear their study of Jude, it was really good.
It was really good. There's a lot of goodness packed into that itty bitty. Yeah, if somebody says like, "Oh, you're gonna read the Bible," you should say, "I'm gonna read the book of Jude."
And they'll be
Yeah, and they'll be like, and then you're done. You're like, and I'm done. Okay, because
it's very small, but very powerful.
Exactly, it's a good letter. But
there might be a lot of conviction in it.
Yeah,
that's okay.
That was a bit.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah,
it'll all be fine.
We need to hear it sometimes, right? Or maybe not. But we are in John over here.
Yep.
Study of John. And we are in the last gospel. And as we talked a little bit before, hi, Miss Diane. Good to see you. We don't always, I guess I should say, there's like a counter on the screen, and we have found that it is not accurate. And so we'll have like multiple people watching. They'll be commenting, but that won't be, like the number on the top of the screen will be too small. So if you're here with us, please do say hi, like Diane did, because we don't really know who's here. And, we know you can watch us later, that's for sure. But John, as we talked about before, it's not one of the synoptic gospels. It's not one of the first three really are they do a tight view of Jesus's life, and this one is a little bit different, but the pattern is different. So that's why the first three gospels are called the synoptic gospels. They're similar, and the last one is a little bit more editorial. And of course, this one was written a long time after, at the very end of John's life, and maybe like between 85 to 100 AD. And we know that Jesus was like, this ministry stuff was between like 27 to 30 AD. And so it was written a little bit after. I think that's why John kind of is editorial. He kind of goes off on tangents about, the bread of life and the water, so he uses a lot of great flowery language. It's just different, but very important. As we talked about last week, John is very careful to point out locations, dates, times, and so he likes to put a lot of those details in, and that's really helpful. Like even in the beginning, like in this first chapter, right, he's like on the third day or 3 days later, and so there's he's going to, we're going all over the place. We're going to talk about where Jesus goes just in this chapter. He's going all over the place, and John allows us to see that. So,
and it's nice for reference for historical things, so that we can, when they talk about certain events or certain things that are happening, or rulers, or the area that they're visiting, it can kind of be backed up by his history.
Yes.
So
yes, other historians, not just the Bible, as we talked about last week. Not everybody believes the Bible or wants to believe the Bible, and so that's why it's so powerful that this aligns with other historians. The famous historian Josephus, who's not necessarily Christian, but has catalogs of historical accounts, and they line up to the Bible. There's no crossing. So,
and I actually just recently, I can't tell you where I read the article, but I did come across an article that was saying that archaeologists, I guess, had just discovered or unearthed evidence of the earthquake that's spoken about in the Bible.
Ta-da!
Just saying.
Ta-da! So yeah, so these are real things. I know that it probably took historians or theologians like some time to figure out when each thing was written, but people smarter than me sat down and did this, and that's how we know, obviously, that this book was written. This could be the oldest book the most recently written book in the New Testament. So we know that John wrote this, John 1, 2, and 3, and Revelation, all at the very end of his life. So it's just kind of interesting. But it's great because John has a little bit of perspective.
Yeah, and I think perspective comes with age too. You think differently as you get older. You're wiser. You can understand the scope of things than when you're younger. Things are different. You see things differently than you do when you're older.
We're not cutting down young people.
No, not at all. They're very full of life and, gumption, and
it's very important.
Let's get out there, let's do things. And, when you're in the twilight of your life, you like to sit back and really contemplate maybe what's going on. Yeah. And I think wisdom. I think you can see that it sounds like he is retelling and really thinking about what his life was like with Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Thank you, John. So we're gonna start off with talking about Jesus's mother. Very interesting that John never uses the word Mary. He always says Jesus's mother for whatever reason.
Well, he was entrusted with the care of Mary. When Jesus was on the cross, actually, he, gave
he said, you
Yeah,
said John, your mom.
Yeah, John take care of my mom.
Uh-huh.
And so maybe, they probably had a very, I would imagine, a close relationship. If he was then now the caretaker of her, he would have made sure that she was taken care of and loved, and
she may have passed away by this point even, so depending on everybody's age here, but yeah, so John does some funny things. We talked about last week how he calls him Jesus, but he doesn't say Christ, and so even though he is really narrowing in on the deity of Jesus in the book of John, that's kind of what the book of John is known for. It's presenting the deity of Jesus Christ. He's also absolutely presenting the humanity of Jesus by just calling him Jesus, his name. So anyway, John's just presenting it a little differently, and it's more of that perspective, how, if Jen saw an accident from one corner and I saw the same accident from another corner, we would both have a different perspective because we're two different people, two different ages, two different, from two different backgrounds. We're not that far in background. We're far in age, but we're not far in background. But it's with all of your wealth of knowledge, her husband's a fireman, my husband's a pastor, so maybe we would see things differently, and that's really laid out in all the Gospels, the Synoptic and then John's. So, well, I went off on a little bit of a tangent because we only have 25 verses, and so we wanted to, and we just did John chapter 1 last week, so we kind of presented this last week, but excited to kind of tell it again, right? John Calvin Bagwell, does that help you if we present it again? Hi, John, he's watching. Paul is here, and he says he shared it on his timeline.
Thank you.
Feel free to share it on your timeline. That would be great. And, of course, Diane's still here. So thanks, everybody. And I think we're
ready to go. Here we go with chapter 2, John 2, verse 1. The next day, Jesus' mother was a guest at a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. The wine supply ran out during the festivities, so Jesus' mother spoke to him about the problem. They have no more wine, she told him. How does that concern you and me? Jesus asked. My time has not yet come. But his mother told the servants, do whatever he tells you. Sorry. Making sure I was in the right place because there's a lot of commentary here. 6 stone water pots were standing there. They were used for Jewish ceremonial purposes and held 20 to 30 gallons each. Jesus told the servants, fill the jars with water. When the jars had been filled to the brim, he said, dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies. So they followed his instructions. When the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servant knew, he called the bridegroom over. Usually a host serves the best wine first, he said. Then when everyone is full and doesn't care, he brings out the less expensive wines. But you have kept the best until now. This miraculous sign in Cana in Galilee was Jesus' first display of his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After the wedding, he went to Capernaum for a few days with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples.
So this is the first miracle that is recorded, and it's it's a little bit strange. I'll just put that right out there because every time we talk about this, we have to have the discussion about whether the wine was alcoholic or it was non-alcoholic. So, and every time we talk about this, every time I talk to anybody about this, there's debate why it would have been alcoholic, why it wouldn't have been alcoholic, and I don't like drinking. I don't believe in drinking. I don't believe that Christians, I believe that it erodes your witness, especially, and of course, drunkenness is a sin. So I'm not a big fan. So I'm also not a big fan of saying like this is alcoholic. I'll just tell you that right. I'm a little biased to tell you that out of the gate. However, I will say just a couple things. Wine was a part of their culture. It was not odd. It wasn't
taboo.
Yeah, it was a way for them
to celebrate.
To celebrate, also to just have something that wasn't water sources were different back then.
Yeah.
Water could be contaminated. Water could have strange things in it. Our water is filtered and clean and, and yet still, nobody drinks tap water. And it's like, well, it's probably not going to kill you. But water sources back then, maybe a little more sketchy. So having some grape juice, some fruit of the vine, it made a lot more sense, obviously, just to have something. Grapes were, they grow well in that region, and so it was kind of their thing. In Leviticus, in Levitical ceremonies, they used wine, and so so wine was. And these are people of the Old Testament, right? These are people of the Old Testament. So we do know one thing. We do know that drunkenness was condemned. Drunkenness was condemned. And we're not, people say, oh, well, it's kind of saying that you would bring out the cheaper wine at the end after everybody was drunk. That's not exactly it. I loved your version because it said after everybody was full.
Yeah.
It's like when you first drink your Coke before you eat your meal, like it's a big deal. But then once you've eaten, you're just you're just drinking your soda or your water or whatever.
Right.
It's not that big of a deal. Your belly's full and you're done with dinner. But I don't know that it was alcoholic. I don't know that doesn't say that it was. Doesn't say that it wasn't. So that's kind of the issue.
Guess if you want to do further study, I guess you could research the culture in those times. I'm sure there's books and things about that in that culture at that time, was it normal to have it be fermented or not?
And there are both. And I think that's the problem, is that there are both, because and people say, well, Jesus just made it, so even though it tasted very good, because of course everything that Jesus would make would taste very good, he just made it. So could he have made 20-year-old wine? Sure, but he just made it. It was probably new. So maybe it was just really amazing grape juice. But here's kind of the thing. I say all that to then pull it all back and say, we're going to get hung up at this point about alcoholic or non-alcoholic, we are actually going to miss the bigger picture. And the bigger picture has everything to do with, it has everything to do with verse number 6. 6 stone water jugs. We know that they were huge. They were for ceremonial washing. This was a family that didn't have great wealth, clearly, or they would not have run out of wine. And so, so we're assuming that probably these big water jugs were probably like your trash cans at the back of your house. Like, we don't put that out. It's not the good china. We don't put that out. But Jesus said, pull out these old, worn out, beat up water containers that, because you had to wash for all these ceremonies. You had to wash before this and wash before that. So you needed to have jugs of water around. But you didn't probably bring those jugs out and, put them beside the table. Obviously, they're big too. But he said, bring out these old nasty jars and fill them up. And then I'm going to create something amazing. And so, the parallel here is that we are
the empty vessels. Yeah.
Empty messed up. Probably it's okay if we'd be pushed aside. We're not, we're not really worthy. We're not really, fancy, and maybe in God's view. We're old and we're used up, but God wants to fill us. God wants to literally do a miracle in our lives. And I think that's what I like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like in this story. I know that we always get hung up about the one. I know. But I just feel like that's just so much more to this story. Plus the compassion that Jesus had on this family. Some people say maybe they were related.
You know how I love The Chosen?
Yeah.
And this is in one of the episodes of The Chosen, and how they interpreted this was that it was an old friend of Mary's, the mother of the groom, I think it was the groom. Mother of the
Mary's
groom
friend.
was Mary, like an old friend of Mary's. And so like Jesus knew the family. Right. He had, grown up with this family, and it would have been a huge embarrassment to have run out of wine. A huge embarrassment. And where she goes and asks him, we need to do something, we need to do something. And in the commentary and stuff, it does go into saying that she wasn't asking him to perform a miracle.
No.
She had faith that he could solve the problem.
Yeah.
In his way.
Right.
And, when he does say my time has not yet come, he wasn't necessarily prepared to solve the problem in a flashy way.
Right.
Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
Only a few people, just the servants, knew what had transpired. It wasn't like he did this huge healing and a huge miracle in front of the whole
fireworks.
Through the whole thing.
It's just worked out. Jesus stayed on the down low.
And if you do watch the show, it just was so beautifully done, because it shows him talking to the kids, Jesus talking to the little kids at the kids table, and then also celebrating and dancing with the disciples, and it was just really neat.
The disciples were there.
Yeah, and it was just really, really neat. And then like towards the end, everybody is dancing. Mary, his mother, and him lock eyes, and she's like, thank you, and he's like,
my baby, good job, good job, you did good, boy.
So it's just like it just a mom.
Yeah,
she's just being a mom, and she knows her son can help.
And he did.
He did.
And that's beautiful, because I love that compassion, literally, that Jesus had on this family. This was a religious ceremony. Weddings were religious ceremonies. They often took a week of celebration. You didn't refuse an invitation. That would be really rude, really rude. But it was also unheard of that you would run out of food or wine. It was anything. And
it was a huge expense. It was a lot to put on this kind of production.
Yeah, that's kind of the deal. And so so it's so beautiful that that Jesus cares, right? He cares about the little stuff. Don't put him to the test like that. Don't buy 3 sandwiches and invite 800 people over, be like, Jesus, can you do a little something? But it's just great that it happened. And I've also heard another take on it, and again, the scripture is not entirely clear. So what happens is that we insert our own thoughts. And so another theologian that I had looked up today, he said that he felt like maybe Mary, now Mary has said that Jesus is the Son of God, right? And she said that she was a virgin when Jesus was born. And so this is the story, right? And probably people were kind of like, Jesus is about 30 here, or he's already 30. So it's been 30 years and she's been singing this same song. And it's like, when are you going to redeem me? When are you going to like clear my name a bit. You know what I mean? So again, this is taking a little bit of liberty here. But you know, like him saying like, my time has not yet come. Like, I'm going to clear your name, Mom. When I die on the cross and I rise again, I will clear your name and I will prove the virgin birth. And I will prove that you were the mother, you know, of the Messiah. However, not yet. Not yet. And so I thought that was also an interesting way to think about it. I'm not entirely sure that that's what Mary was doing. But like you said, I don't think Mary was saying like, can you please do fireworks?
Right.
I think, you know, that they probably knew this family and there was just true compassion. I don't know about the Mary thing, but
well, what was it? I really liked too in the commentary how they talked about, you know, verse 5 about her asking and telling the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. Too. And
there's a sermon in there.
Yeah,
Mother's Day sermon.
Mary submitted to Jesus's way of doing things. She recognized that Jesus was more than her human son. He was the Son of God. When we bring our problems to Christ, we may think we know how he should take care of them, but he may have a completely different plan. Like Mary, we should submit and allow him to deal with the problem as he sees best.
True story.
So I liked, because I mean, you can kind of just glance over that little conversation between the two of them, but she had faith. She brought her problem to Jesus and trusted that he would take care of it.
He would handle it.
He would, whatever his plan and whatever he thought was best to do would be the best thing to do.
The historians say that by this point Joseph had already passed away.
Yes.
And obviously we don't hear much about Joseph, you know, so we do assume, I think it's probably okay to assume that he wasn't there. And so the oldest son, right, also kind of takes just the same as today. You know, if my husband was gone, your husband goes before you, you know, sorry, Jason, if you're watching, you know, our sons kind of rise up and fill some kind of a void in the family. And so that's also kind of it. It's like she, of course, she realizes that he's special, but he is probably also the man of the house. And she can trust him.
Yes.
I mean, it's the Messiah, so he has to have like handled everything. He never sinned. Like, how wonderful would it be to live with that guy? You know? Yes, we do see that he does have righteous anger, but
we're getting to that part.
That's next. That's now. But for the most part, right? He's also like so kind and so forgiving, and you know, and just pearls of wisdom probably just, you know, drip from his lips. And so I'm sure Mary could have every faith, you know, she'd be like, of course Jesus can handle it, and that's why I'm bringing it to him. Anyway, lots of interesting ideas there. Stick with the Bible.
I'm just curious, was the last time Joseph is mentioned in the Bible when they lost him? Yeah, when they lost him in Jerusalem.
Right, when he was 12 years old. Yeah. So, and of course, the Bible does stop, right? It doesn't say anything else about him after 12 till now.
He starts his ministry.
When he starts his ministry, and Joseph is never mentioned. So, yeah, so that's why there's assumptions, and there's also some historians that talk about how Joseph passed away before Jesus started his ministry. So
we don't know.
For whatever reason, though, Joseph is not mentioned. So
I wonder if he, because they kept such good records.
They did. Jews
like how could they not
oral records, oral history?
Yeah, then maybe that's why.
So and that's why all of the begats you needed to know. As a Jewish person, you needed to know, you needed to be able to trace your bloodline back to Abraham or back to Adam and Eve. And so that was, or back to Noah or whatever, you know, that was very important. And of course, it became very important because it was all then recorded in the Bible. But oral history, the stories, even, we're not exactly sure when Genesis was written, but we know that the stories, lived on in the people's, just like the Passover, right? The Jews still celebrate the Passover today, and it is exactly the same as the Passover that they celebrated thousands of years ago, because you've got to pass that story down. So
I was going to say, if it was written down, then they had to have known when he died.
Yeah, I guess.
Nope.
He just didn't.
Probably got lost.
He didn't make it in. He was a footnote, and but he was important. He's in the Christmas story.
Well, I mean, he was still an influence. He was a carpenter, and Jesus took up the trade
of
his father, earthly father,
stepdad, or whatever he was. And of course, Joseph and Mary had other kids.
Correct.
So those were important, just as Paul and John were talking about some of the kids, Jesus's siblings, that became important in Jesus's ministry and after Jesus's ministry. All right, well, let's see. Righteous, angry Jesus.
Yeah, it gets a little testy here coming up. So we are going to pick back up in John 2 and verse 13. It was time for the annual Passover celebration, and Jesus went to Jerusalem. In the temple area, he saw merchants selling cattle, sheep, and doves for sacrifices, and he saw money changers behind their counters. Jesus made a whip from some rope and chased them all out of the temple. He drove out the sheep and oxen, scattered the money changers' coins over the floor, and turned over their tables. Then, going over to the people who sold doves, he told them, "Get these things out of here. Don't turn my Father's house into a marketplace." Then his disciples remembered this prophecy from the scriptures, "Passion for God's house burns within me." "What right do you have to do these things?" the Jewish leaders demanded. "If you have this authority from God, show us a miraculous sign to prove it." "All right," Jesus replied. "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." "What?" they exclaimed. "It took 46 years to build this temple, and you can do it in 3 days?" But by this temple, Jesus meant his body. After he was raised from the dead, the disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed both Jesus and the scriptures. Because of the miraculous signs he did in Jerusalem at the Passover celebration, many people were convinced that he was indeed the Messiah. But Jesus didn't trust them because he knew what people were really like. No one needed to tell him about human nature.
No. Yes, for he knew what was in a man. That's what Mike says. Well, we can go back. So he was in Cana of Galilee, and then it says in verse 12 he went to Capernaum, and Capernaum became basically his
home base,
home base. Even though I like how it says here, it said even though Jesus made the city his base of operations in Galilee, he condemned it for the people's unbelief. So it's not like it got some kind of special pass. It's not like, oh, you're the home base, you must be the best. No, he condemned it. So not always good to be in Capernaum or to be a Capernaum. Sure. A person of Capernaum.
In Capernaum is where he did call a few of his disciples. Matthew,
yes.
And
I don't know who else.
I don't remember who else. I know Matthew is one.
But yes, they found the tax collector, found him there in the big city, doing his thing, living in his big house, doing the plush life.
Yep.
So he's at Capernaum, and then it was time for the Jewish Passover. It's kind of funny how John says in some of the other places it's called the Lord's Passover, and now he's referring to it as the Jewish as like those Jewish people, it's their Passover. No longer is it the Lord's Passover, because Jesus has come. Jesus has become the Passover lamb, and so obviously we know John wrote this a long time after the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So he's kind of cute, some words there. It's like, so it's Jewish people's Passover. They still do it today. So he went to Jerusalem. So now we can see kind of where, sorry, I'm getting a call. It's my mom. Mom, log on to the thing. You can see me here. So we know the progression. Again, John likes to tell. John likes to give the places, and as you probably know, the Jewish calendar has been the same. They didn't start a new calendar. They don't have BC and AD. It's the same. So it's 4,000 and something to the Jewish people, and so you know when the Jewish Passover is. We can look back and know when the Jewish Passover was in 100 AD. So they, we can go back and trace it. Supposedly this is in April-ish. I don't know that they know exactly what year, but they know when Passover was. And Jesus would have gone to Jerusalem 3 times a year. All men, right, had to go down to Jerusalem 3 times a year for Passover, the festivals, and for
census?
No, it's 3 religious
holidays.
If you know what that third one is, maybe you can put that down for me. I don't have my phone, so I can't even Google it. But anyway, Jerusalem would get really crowded because the men had to come for these three religious festivals. So the other thing that would be really busy is the temple courts. It'd be really busy. We know that people had to give temple tax. They had to pay, and so you brought your Roman money and you had to change it for. I don't know if they exactly say it, but it's like, religious money.
Temple coins.
Temple coins, yeah. I'm not sure how they put it. So that's why they had to have that currency exchange. And this, of course, it did become like kind of racketeering, but it was also, they had it there for convenience, right? For ease. Like, like, we try to make it easy, for people to tithe here. So we have PayPal. It's like we're also trying to make it easy. There's some convenience factor there. It's not okay what they did. And then, of course, if they're traveling a long way away, and they have to give an animal for their offering, for their sin sacrifice. And so it's not always easy to bring an ox from wherever you're coming from. So you pick one up outside the temple. And these were raised for that. There was great care, I'm sure, in raising these animals.
Well, because they had to be pure or perfect.
Yeah.
There couldn't be anything wrong with the animal. And if you brought an animal from this far distance, a lot of the time, the priest would deem it unclean.
Right. Or it might get sick along the way,
Right.
So I guess unless you were like a local, you could just pick up a little animal as you're running into the temple, as you're exchanging your your Roman coins for your temple coins. And so you can kind of, we're setting the stage here. And then Jerusalem is packed. So there is a lot going on, and a lot of people are doing this, and human greed
sneaks in.
And I'm sure
they're price gouging.
Yeah, we saw it with toilet paper. We saw it with masks. Supply and demand. And this should technically be a little different because this is like religious stuff.
Yeah.
But here it is. They're busy, and maybe they only have so many goats, and so they double and triple the price.
Yep.
And Jesus didn't like that. So you want to tell us what he did?
He made a rope, whip, and say, "Get on out of here."
Yeah, like, this is always weird. Like, this is not the Jesus that I know. This is not the Jesus of Facebook. This is not, this is not that Jesus. This is not the Jesus that is like I talk to little kids about, So this is always, is it shocking to you? It's kind of shocking to me. He made a whip and chased everybody out. Like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I think in some of the commentary it said that he deemed it an insult against God doing what they were doing. It was an insult to God. And so think about if you were in a situation where the person you love the most, whoever that is, could be your parents, your children, your husband, and somebody comes in and just insults them to like they're going to be in tears by the insults that are being given.
Yeah, it's just cruel.
Wouldn't the anger bubble up in you? And they deem this, because there's this whole thing, oh, Jesus was angry, and they call it righteous angry. And not just anger like we have here and there
to get revenge or to be right. He
was defending God, I guess, is how you can think about it. He was defending God's honor, and his deity and his divineness. So
because they were kind of making a mockery, of this place that was, and obviously in the Old Testament, well, and still then, right? God actually occupied the temple. So God was in, could be in the Holy of Holies. So he's there, he's occupying the temple. This was before he occupied us as a temple. We became the temple. But at this point, this was really, it's, still is. I'm not saying that churches aren't, wonderful, holy places, but as we've talked about before, Jesus is, you can worship Jesus in a field. You can worship Jesus in Times Square. You can worship Jesus in a church.
But this was like their holiest of holy places. This is where God dwelled.
Yeah,
it's
a big deal.
In their mind and in their heart. I mean, this was his home.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody coming into your house and, trashing the place is kind of how I would imagine he saw it.
Yeah.
And how disrespectful it would be to have a guest come into your home and just have no regard for any of your things or your home
or you, and just trash the place or whatever, So I don't know how you see it. If you see it differently, please put that in the comments. We'd love to hear how you understand it. But it's definitely this righteous indignation, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the commentary is quick to point out, as we are quick to point out, that there's a difference between uncontrolled rage and righteous indignation, but both of them are called anger. So this is that same sort of thing where actually in Greek it was two different things. It was two different words. But like we use love in the English language, and then like I love Jen, I love my husband. So those are different kinds of love, but I only have one word, and so we lump them all together. So anger, we lump it together with like, with rage, like, a guy with an M16 in McDonald's, with somebody literally like getting upset that, somebody burned the church down or something because they hate Christians. So it says it's right to be angry about injustice and sin. It is wrong to be angry over trivial personal offenses. So that's where you need some discernment. In hindsight, when you've calmed down, you probably can get the discernment. But when you've been cut off on the on the 405. I get it. You get angry. I get angry too. I get annoyed. We just had this awful case of road rage where, a young man shot into the back of a little car, and the bullet went right through a 4-year-old in the back seat because the mom had, I don't know, cut him off or flipped him off. Anyway, I'm sure it was bad behavior, but that she now has to regret for the rest of her life. That's extreme. That doesn't really, that anger doesn't fit the circumstance, or it's not appropriate. So a little tangent about anger there.
And I like what the commentary said too for verses 14 through 16, which is talking about him overturning the tables and so forth. It says God's temple was being misused by people who had turned it into a marketplace. They had forgotten or didn't care that God's house is a place of worship, not a place for making a profit. And then our attitude towards the church is wrong if we see it as a place for personal contacts or business advantage. Make sure you attend church to worship God.
Yeah.
It's not a
marketing or
what's it called? Matchmaking.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, "Oh, where can I find a good woman or a good man?" And they say, "Go to church." And I'm like, it's not like it's a it's a market for that.
Yeah, we're not. If it happens, that's wonderful, but that's another thing.
That shouldn't be the factor of why you're going.
Yes.
Or the intention in going to church is to find your mate.
And I saw
if it naturally happens, but that's not the reason you should be going.
And it's a little odd too if you are like every group you go to and you meet like a single boy or a single girl and you're like, that could be my future wife, that could be my future husband, and you're always singling out on that. It's like, you need to learn how to have friendships. Have some friendships, and don't always you're not like shopping aisle 5 at the grocery store. Have some friendships, let things develop, let God make those connections. If you meet your future spouse at church, that is great. But just know that not everybody is Christian at church.
And it shouldn't be the reason. It shouldn't be the reason for attending church.
For attending, yeah. So clearly these people had made a mockery of some of the things that needed to happen, or they were doing for convenience, but they took some liberties and made it into
and they made it
personal
convenient
gain.
for themselves, not just convenient for the people coming in, but it was convenient for them. It's like wouldn't it have been just as easy to be outside of the temple?
Right.
Not in the temple walls, but outside the temple as people are approaching. You could have had your stuff there.
Yeah, you could have marked it up and been, but they also they wanted to be inside the temple walls to give them credibility.
Correct.
And so when you're using that credibility and you're like, oh yeah, I'm part of the congregation, like look at me, and then you're gouging. Yeah, that's
all wrong.
It doesn't match up. So yeah, so that's
and there's a fine line. There's a fine line even with churches today.
Absolutely.
Some churches do not allow any kind of, even if you have a speaker come and they want to sell their book, they're not allowed to do it inside of the church or even the foyer. It would maybe have to be outside of the church. It shouldn't be inside the walls of the church. So some congregations don't mind it, some do, and because it is, at least it's money that's being put to use for the kingdom. It's spreading the gospel or spreading love and joy and so forth. It's not like you're selling water or you're to make so that you can make your house payment, or what I mean, something like that, where
we bless
it's selfish.
This water, it's holy water. So it's $5 a bottle. Oh, don't drink it.
Yeah,
bathe in it. No, I'm kidding. I have no idea. But anyway, I think this is always like kind of a shocking thing because it's, you know, it's a Jesus that we might not recognize, but a great time to talk about this righteous anger, this righteous indignation, and how there's a place for that. You know,
and God got angry. He got angry in the Old Testament. He's gonna get angry in the New Testament, and he's gonna get angry at the end of time. So, you know, they're
good to know this side, I guess.
There's judgment.
Good to be fearful of this side.
Yeah, I mean, there's judgment. He, you know, Paul and John were talking about it in their study earlier about, you know, about hell and God, and I think we may have talked about this before, but it's a good place to reiterate it, is God doesn't send you to hell. We, as from the time that Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, we have been on our way to hell.
Yeah.
And until Jesus came and died and was risen, and now we have the choice. God has given us a choice, a way out.
Go somewhere else.
A way out of our sin. And so I don't like when people say, you know, God doesn't send people to hell. No, we were already on our way. God is a God of love and loves us so much that he's given us a way out of our sin.
Right.
And he's given us the choice. We have free will. We have free will, and he respects our free will to choose him or not choose him. And he's a gentleman. Gentle person, I guess I should be say.
Gentle spirit.
A gentle creator.
A
gentle creator.
Yeah.
And a respectful creator. He's going to respect your choice.
Yeah.
Even though it's going to bring him, you know, to tears because he loves you. He created you.
He doesn't want you to go to hell.
He doesn't want to be separate from you. And that's what hell is. It's an eternity of separation from God.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of nasty stuff that goes down there that, you know, it's talked about in the Bible. You may want to look it up. Not fun stuff happens there. Not fun stuff.
Don't want to be part of it. So that's for sure.
So there is anger. There is anger. There is sadness. God has all of that. He has all of that.
Yeah. He deserves to have it all too, because we
disappoint him.
Yes.
We're so
ornery. We're ornery. We're his ornery creation. So
disobedient.
Yes. Rebellion. Yes, we've done all these.
Well, if you have teenagers, you kind of might have an insight of maybe what it's like.
You have a special gift. That's right. You have a special, a new special way to feel bad for the Lord.
A little insight to what God must feel
like. They know everything at 16.
And 17. He has billions of teenagers.
Yeah, poor Lord. So it says in verse, it says, it was funny that in 22, it says, after Jesus was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what he had said. Then they believed in the scriptures and the words that Jesus had spoken. So it's kind of funny, but so they believed in him later, but he did not believe in them. It says in verse 24, he did not entrust himself to them, for he knew all men, and for he knew what was in a man. So kind of funny. They're believing, not believing, have levels of belief, and he's like, yeah, I don't trust you guys. I just had to clear out the temple from your mess. I'm not trusting you guys. Again, he loves his creation, but I just thought it was funny because a while after they believed, and on the whole time Jesus is like, I didn't believe in you, so don't worry about it.
It's in the commentary, it brings up a verse in Jeremiah which states, the human heart is most deceitful and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is?
Jesus does. That's why he's like, yeah, I didn't trust you.
Yeah, that the faith of some followers was superficial.
Absolutely.
And soon they were praising him, and soon they would be crying, crucify him.
Right. They're like, oh, let's kill him. We love him. He's the Savior.
We love him. They loved him on, on Palm Sunday.
On Palm Sunday.
They didn't call it that, but we call it that now. They loved him on Palm Sunday, and a few days later, they're
crucified him by Friday, and whooped him on Thursday. So it's just crazy, but just kind of interesting that it says that after, and of course, because John is writing this decades later, that's why John adds in verse 22, after he was raised from the dead, because we are just talking about the very beginning.
Yep.
Like the first couple weeks of his ministry, and John's already slipping in. Well, after the resurrection, they looked back and they remembered that.
It's almost like he's writing like a memoir.
Yes.
Of
Absolutely.
his time with Jesus is kind of how I see this book. Is him contemplating and going back, and after the events have all happened, going back and going back to them and seeing, oh yeah, that's why he said that. That's why this meant this. And,
right. John kind of is connecting the dots. Sorry, I won't put my hand all over. John's kind of connecting the dots between, the now and the later. And so it helps us, obviously, to be able to connect the dots too.
Right.
It's a good thing for us. So, we skipped over the part about the temple. Jesus actually, from what I read in a different commentary, 19, that Jesus didn't use the word destroy this temple. He used a different word that usually would refer to a body. It was I can't remember what the meaning is now. But he wasn't really talking about structure, but then when they talked about it, like in verse 20, that's what they assumed that he meant, and so then they used their word for temple, which meant place of God. But that wasn't the same word that he had used in 19. So there was some grand assumption on their part. But again, a lot of these things that Jesus says, people didn't have any reference for them. So I hate to always be like, oh, it's, stupid,
Pharisees.
Yeah, those people of the religious law, who are they? It's like they didn't really have any, they didn't understand. Maybe they could have, maybe if they'd studied in a different way, maybe they could, God clearly could have illuminated them, but they were convinced that they knew what everything meant, so they weren't looking for a new way to talk about things. And so but yeah, and of course they thought, he's crazy, it's taken 46 years to build this temple. What is he talking about? But again, after he was raised from the dead, the disciples were like, I remember that time he said about the temple, which was crazy at the time, but now makes total sense.
Yep. He's the temple. Jesus was the temple.
Yes. So and I don't know that they had a lot of reference for that, but it's important because it's one of those what's that called, foreshadowing in movies or books. And and somebody says something weird, or they do something strange, and you're like, that was weird, and then of course they use it 4 scenes later to connect the dots. And so that may be what it was, but I don't know. You have anything on that?
No.
It's kind of weird.
No, I think that, it's just, it was a misunderstanding. They took things literally. They couldn't really grasp it was a far out idea. They just couldn't grasp it.
Like, what do you mean you're going to build it in 3 days?
Yeah.
You just ran everybody out of here with a homemade whip, dude. What are you? You have the crazy person award for the day. And yeah. So God bless them. These are all important things for us to know now, and they point to the nature of God. But at the time, yes, it must have been like loco.
Yeah, and they were stuck in their ways. They were stuck in their ways. They were stuck in their belief system. They were stuck in their understanding, and they didn't want change. They didn't like change. I mean, look at, you were just saying they celebrate Passover in the same way that they did in Jesus's time, and even before, as after they left Egypt, they've been doing it the same way, the exact same way the whole time. So there are people that don't like change, it sounds like.
They miss something. Even though in every Passover celebration, right, they hide the afikomen, I think is how you say it, and that is literally, and then it comes up empty. So it is like a picture. It's foreshadowing again of the Messiah, and how and how he will be raised from the dead. So it's just kind of funny, but let him go.
It's here.
They are God's chosen people, I'm okay with it. It's all
here if they want it. That's
they don't want it. But they don't want it. But God's, that's their own thing. They will have to stand before the Lord, and he judges. He judges. But we obviously have to tell people, and it's not enough to just say, "Oh well, they're God's chosen people. They'll be okay." Like, no, feel free to talk to somebody about the Messiah. Even they're Jewish, they're Jehovah's Witness, they're Mormon. Just say it.
Yep.
Just say it. So we had 25 verses.
I know,
and we still went over 5 minutes.
I know, but we like to talk and get in depth, and
we had a lot of fun. I hope that you
got some insight.
Yeah, or you had your brain stretched a little. I know I had my brain stretched a little just by studying this tonight. So tomorrow we are in
second. Are you in Corinthians still?
We're still in Corinthians.
Okay.
I'm having a mind meld. I think we're in 1 Corinthians 16. Is there 1 Corinthians 16? And then what is after that? Thursday.
Thursday is Pastor Dan and Pastor Gay, and they're still in Genesis. I couldn't tell you the chapter. It's somewhere in the 30s.
30s, late 30s. I don't know if they're on tonight.
And then Sunday is church service at 5 o'clock. And then Tuesday at 4:30 is Pastor Paul and John, and they're in Jude. Or did they just finish Jude? Because it's all done, right? It's
Jude
one chapter.
One chapter. So, hey, thanks, Diane. Love you, lady. They're contemplating on doing Revelation, but we've already done Revelation. So, but Paul and I did it. It'd be totally different to have John and Paul do it. So, not totally different. It's the same scripture, but you know what I mean. So we'll see. And tomorrow night, Veronica and I are in 1 Corinthians 16. It is the last chapter of 1 Corinthians. So thank you so much for joining us. And I think that's it. Are we good?
See you next time.
We will see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.